Hello, everyone. Joseph Adams, welcome in. I See Liberty. Welcome back from Facebook jail. I am so excited to be here with you guys. So excited. Tonight, I hope I have a show worthy of your guys' attention. And boy, am I ready to discuss this all with you. Talking about healthcare tonight, it's an important topic because so many of us have, especially surrounding COVID and everything else going on, there is much ado with this topic. Everyone has their opinions, and so I wanted to take a little bit of time tonight in order to break some of these down and have a good, robust conversation around it. In the past, we've been trying to keep these conversations a little bit shorter, and tonight I gotta say, actually, I could probably take these off, can't I? I gotta say that tonight we're gonna be changing it up a little bit, and we're gonna actually extend it out. So we're probably gonna be trying to keep this within an hour, but we all know how libertarians go. Yeah, you missed the intro. The song was called Tyranny. Oh, I already closed out the tab, so I don't have it anymore. But the song was called Tyranny. It's a new metal, royalty-free music. But the heat from those peppers burned off the side of his head. Yes, it did. Those were hot and spicy. But I want to thank you guys all for being here. And as I said, we're going to be getting into the incredibly important topic of healthcare tonight, and so we're gonna hit a lot of different topics, and just for the sake of transparency, because I want to take deep dives into things. What we're going to start off with is we're going to hit a lot of different topics tonight, and then over time we'll come back and we'll dive deep into these different specifics, in order to give you guys as many talking points and as many points to do your own research on, and to be able to use when you're interacting in your day-to-day conversations with people whom you may disagree with. But first, before we get into that, we do have a little bit of housekeeping to do. So of course, if this is your first time here, welcome in. My name is Jason Lyon. I am Mr. America, the Bearded Truth, here on the Muddy Waters Media platform, and I'm so incredibly excited to be here, and so thankful to Matt and Spike for giving me the opportunity to come out here and talk to you guys as your neighborhood friendly libertarian. Of course, want to give a big shout out to Eskimo Libertarian, who is in the chat right now, and of course Cajun Libertarian as well, as they are the newcomers to the Muddy Waters Media team, and what a fantastic duo they are on. And if you guys have been missing those shows, you guys got to tune in Friday nights with them. Lily says your haircuts look good. Thank you so much, Lily. And but yeah, so excited to be here on Muddy Waters Media talking about these things as we continue on with the segments of taking a deeper dive into topics, talking about it from the Republican point of view, talking about it from the Democratic point of view, and pushing forward to find out what is the solution instead of what is a band-aid that we can apply. And so we're going to dive into that in a spat or make. I think it would be spat. Gotta put Spike first. I'm just kidding, Matt. Don't hate me. But I do want to bring up something that was referenced by Eskimo Libertarian, the peppers. If you guys missed last Tuesday's show, I was so honored. I was speechless because of the peppers, but I was speechless because I had the honor of going on for Muddy Waters Media with both Matt and Spike, and this was actually, I believe it was the first time that all three of us have been on one platform together. We've had attempts before in the past, and that was referenced there that night, but this was the first time that we actually came together in order for people to see me in pain and suffering and to donate to a fantastic cause. And if you guys are interested in what that cause is, I just popped it into the chat there. This is the GoFundMe to help a family as they continue to battle for custody of their daughter, and with the most well-being of her in mind. And so at this time, we're not able to talk about any of the specificities of it or any of the specifics of it, but in time, this family is looking forward to coming out and sharing their details and give thanks and everything else. So if you guys have not been able to donate, or if you guys have managed to find a couple coins in your couch and you guys want to help out that family, the GoFundMe is still up, and they would be incredibly appreciated. This is a family that has been endorsed by Spike Cohen himself, by Matt Wright himself, and of course by me as well, as we continue to work towards helping them out. So we've all been able to know a little bit more about this story in order to ensure the validity of it, and to verify that it is an absolutely important cause. And so I'm incredibly blessed to be able to help them out any way that I can. So if you guys do have an opportunity to help them out, it would be much appreciated. And as we do push forward from the Tuesday night show, as more donations came in, I ate hotter and hotter peppers, and I turned redder and redder, enough to where, yes, the hair just magically fell out. Thankfully, it fell out in a very, I would say, in a very trendy way, if you will. So I'm grateful for that. But the push still goes on for this family as they are continuing to be in pain. We did get to the first big milestone there, and we got to $2,500 that night donated. So it was amazing to see the Muddy Waters crew come together. I can put up my own personal GoFundMe, and I am basically saving up those PayPal, or I'm saving up that money and to make it, I gotta look it up, and I will make a bigger donation towards the end of this, with everybody who has made personal donations. Give me one moment, please. All right, I have it. I can type it into now. So if you guys are having difficulty with with donating through GoFundMe, feel free to use paypal.me/beardedtruth. Should have been really easy for me to figure out, but it wasn't. Legendary Beard of Liberty has arrived. I've been here, Cajun. I appreciate you coming in though, man. Welcome in. So it's so there we have it. The links for both the GoFundMe as well as for my personal PayPal. I promise you guys, I am keeping track of it. I actually cleared it out before that stream, and so everything that's in that account, everything that comes into PayPal will be going to this. So even if you guys are like, hey, Jason just did some great services and I want to donate to him, if you guys want to donate to me during this stream or any time in the future, guess what? It's going to this family. So it's all good, and I appreciate that. No, don't worry about that, Eskimo. I appreciate that looking out. Teeks, welcome in from Twitch. So fantastic stuff on the horizon there as we continue to show our voluntarist roots and help out families that are in need without the necessity of using government forces in order to ensure that protection. So we have a topic to get into, and I am so incredibly excited for it. Healthcare. I want to start off with a disclaimer that I feel like a lot of people don't really hit, that don't really talk about, and that is that all of us, every single one of us, whether we are libertarian, we are Republican, we are Democratic, or even outside of the parties, I believe that we all have the same desire, and that is for a healthcare system to provide the service of healthcare to as many people as possible, to not cause harm to them, i.e. either through malpractice or damages to their pocketbooks, and that we want to see as many people flourish and to be protected and to be cured and to be just all of the different services that are provided through healthcare. We want to see this happen in great abundance, and so we all have the same desires of the outcome. It's just a matter of the way that we get there is often the thing that trips us up the most. And so I of course want to start off this discussion with saying, you know, I agree with everybody on the desires, and so tonight is going to be a little bit of a dive into some of those points and to see, is this truly going to be working out in the favor of our society? And we already have some comments coming in about what's some of the opinions, and there are let's not be afraid to say it. There are virtually millions of different opinions on how to fix the healthcare system. So I'm going to talk about some of the ones that I personally hold, as well as highlight some of the issues I see with a lot of the systems that are already in place that people are advocating that we fall into. Because as we look through the media, as we look through our social media pages, whether it's on Facebook, whether we're looking at seeing what people are talking about on YouTube, on TikTok, on Twitch, on Twitter, there's a lot of T's, but what other T ones do we have on social media? But as we look out there, people have always got those little gotchas as to why like this other system doesn't work. And I agree, for the most part, a lot of systems aren't going to work. As I've discussed in the past, maybe not on any of these shows, but oftentimes your criticisms of another system usually hold some merit. Sometimes it doesn't. So we have to actually take a dive into those to understand them as much as possible. I appreciate it. Appreciate that, Eskimo. I think I've got some like nervous hiccups going on now. This is always fun. As you guys can tell, I'm still nervous to be in front of you guys, because I love you guys and I respect you guys, and I don't want to steer you guys wrong. And I know that there's an opportunity there. Cassie brings up a heartfelt point. The price itself is ridiculous. An ER visit to the hospital for 4 hours was billed to the insurance for $11,000. And we will talk a little bit about health coverage, or like health care itself, and how it translates to health insurance. The libertarian view from Wade Crum, the libertarian view, I would guess, would be self-responsibility, and this can be superimposed onto healthcare. Well, it would be in one essence of it, but at the same time, when you have a system that is so manipulated, and we'll get into this, of course, when a system is so manipulated, controlled, and guided, it's no longer just about you trying to navigate those waters when there's so many barriers in the way of better healthcare. So we will get into this all, and I'm so excited for it. So I first want to start off with talking about, of course, one of the most predominant arguments that we see: universal healthcare. Universal healthcare is one of those systems in which everybody who uses universal healthcare has a different factor that they're focused on, hyper focused on, even, if you will. And so when we look at these universal systems, are they looking to make sure that it's 100% universal and cost effective, to where they're suppressing the cost as much as possible to ensure that people, that taxes aren't being raised as much, that people aren't having to pay out of pocket when they go in? Or are they looking to make it universal and trying to figure out a way to push for absolute speedy appointments and coverage and care, and seeing specialists and seeing surgeons? There are very few examples of this, but there are attempts at this. Now, of course, if you recognize, there's three criteria I spoke about. There's universality, right? The idea that everybody is incorporated into the system, and I think that that's a very noble cause. There is the desire for as much quality as possible, right? You just want to be able to get seen and get taken care of, and you want to know that when you go home at the end of the day, you got the best physician, they diagnosed you properly, they gave you the right medication, and you are well on your way to becoming better. Fantastic aspect to be looking at. And then, of course, the cost, right? You want to drive those costs down because you don't want to hurt people. You don't want to make it a barrier for people to be seen. You want to make sure that people are able to be seen regardless of what walk of life or where at in the walk of life that they are, right? You want to be able to see somebody who may have been down on their luck and is now homeless, be able to go and get seen in a physician. You don't want to have barriers in the way of them. And that is a fantastic aspect to be concerned with. So we have three very important aspects that I agree are incredibly important. They have to be one of the most important things that we look at, because they are the three things that make up any kind of a service or a good, right? So we want to have the highest level of degree of success in all three of those. You want to have as many people getting seen with the highest rate of success and with the minimum amount of damages done to them and to the market. Now, how do we get to that? So when you have universal health care, right, you can never actually legislate to have all three of these things. And I'll explain why and I think I want to start off with Puerto Rico first. We're going to talk about some specific examples. Puerto Rico has a federal cap that was enacted by the U.S. government. And in the way that this worked was that they capped out how much money was going to be allowed to be spent on administrators, allowed to be spent towards doctors, allowed to be spent towards nurses, towards the staff that clean the buildings, towards the buildings themselves. There's a cap overlaying everything. But universal healthcare, people can go get seen. And you know, the desire, the demand that people are taken care of is legislated within it, within the government of Puerto Rico. So there is those two aspects that they drove to be very important. The cost and the universality. But as it has played out, as a result of this, we have seen doctors flee from Puerto Rico because while they were making on average around $44,000 a year, and I would be remiss without saying there's people in our audience right now watching us that are enjoying this stream, and I appreciate each and every one of you guys being here, that make more than $44,000 a year. And to go to an emotional argument, if you're out there saving lives, maybe you deserve a little bit more money than that. But they were making on average $44,000 a year, while American doctors were making on average about $99,000 a year. So about half. So many of these doctors realized this, and they have started fleeing. Most of them have gone to New York, not New York, I apologize, to Florida, specifically like Miami, but they've been moving to Florida, and they've been, since the times of I believe the number started back in like 2014 to 2020. There was 1,300 doctors that had left Puerto Rico. Greater than 10% of the doctors had left. And so while you try to force down the wages, you try to force down the costs, what you do is you cause some of these doctors who were performing well, who were providing a great service, a necessary service to those within their communities, you cause them to leave. You cause them to go, you cause them to flee to other areas to where they can make an actual living. The doctors that remain, they are understaffed because their other staff members have made the same decisions of either leaving that market or moving out of area and continuing to pursue this market. As well as they're working incredibly long hours. So these wages are stagnated, they're frozen, they can't go any higher. But as more and more doctors start leaving, their hours demanded of them continue to go up. And so there's more and more frustrations, and so there's a desire there that we need I just saw Matt Wright's comment that they need to have a change there. So that's a catastrophic situation there that's going on in Puerto Rico. The people of Puerto Rico really need to have healthcare, and sadly their system there, in part due to the federal mandate put in place by our federal government, but also just by their dealings within their own within their own nation has led them down a dark path. Want to talk a little bit about Canada. Canada, our friends to the north. So we talked to our south, and let's talk to them to the north. In Canada, they also have kind of a gap there, that they want to keep the wages down, but they also want to keep the universal healthcare. Now, there is an option, of course, in Canada where if you make good money, you can pay cash. You can leave the public healthcare system and go and take care of yourself. So hopefully, if you guys live in Canada, or if you guys know anyone living in Canada, they make enough money to where they can go pay cash in one of these private healthcare providers, because if they have to go to one of the public ones, the wait time is egregious. The wait time is absolutely egregious. Here was a study that was performed. Patients in Canada waited on average 19.8 weeks. 19.8. For average, it's 5 months to receive treatment, regardless whether they were able to see a specialist or not. In the US, the average wait time for a first-time appointment is 24 days. Which is 3 times faster than Canada. Wait times in emergency room average 24 minutes, which is more than 4 times faster than Canada. And wait times for specialists range between 3 to 6 weeks, which is over 6 times faster than in Canada. So what we have there is we have another system where we see that just trying to focus on the financial part of it and focus on the universality, that wait times to be seen, it increases those wait times. It does not increase the quality of care. It does not increase the guarantee that you will be seen. There have been many reports and many news articles written on individuals who died waiting for life-saving surgeries because merely these schedules are booked out because there's so many people in need and not enough of a supply. The scarcity is a thing within economics, and it's certainly, as much as many people would desire that healthcare not be one of those things driven by economics, it sadly is. Is that tinfoil hat next to Jason? It actually is a lion, but the light causes it to make it different. Eskimo Libertarian was here earlier. Oh yeah, never mind. I'm slow. So we're seeing some issues with those systems, right? And when we look across the world, when we look across the globe, and people want to talk about Norway or Sweden or Finland or Germany and all of these other systems, right? We can find glaring issues with the way that they're structured and set up. So maybe universal healthcare with that universality is a struggle, because it forces the other two, one of them, to suffer, right? Between universality, the spending, and the quality. But what if we focus on the other two? Is that a possibility? We'll get to that, of course, in a little bit. I want to go to another universal healthcare system that we have in the United States. And this, of course, is the Veterans Affairs. So for anyone who thinks that, well, maybe the American government can provide a universal healthcare system here in the States, and this will lead us to be better off. Well, the VA is effectively a universal healthcare system for veterans of the United States Armed Forces, right? So whether you're Marines, Navy, Army, I guess they're going to add the Coast Guard and the Air Force. I'm kidding, of course. But they're going to add all of these things. And so these individuals who served our country and either A, had a disability upon leaving, they were discharged honorably, or a litany of other things, they are now able to utilize the VA system. Now, the VA system is much like what we were discussing with Canada, wherein they have incredibly long wait times, and even worse than that, the quality of care is absolutely catastrophic. I, for a short period after leaving the Navy, during my time, I was going to the Veterans Affairs for some healthcare concerns that I had during my time in the military. And as a result of this, I was treated as a guinea pig and was giving tester medication. So I was effectively a guinea pig for the FDA to run trials to see if this was going to be good, if this was going to be bad, what the side effects were. Some of those situations were way worse than others. So that was incredibly terrifying for not just me, but for my family as a whole. But you see, if you look at across the country, there are still reports to this day, and certainly, right, we've seen the attempts by federal government, right, with very small, minuscule changes being applied through different veteran bills, through different spending bills, and through different omnibus bills, where they say now the VA is fixed. And sadly, we still see veterans of war. We see veterans of peace, of quote unquote peacetime, who never served time in war, like actually deploying and everything else. We see where people who are in need, that are veterans that were promised a good healthcare system, still going out and committing suicide in the parking lots and inside of these Veteran Affairs medical clinics. There are some VAs that are much better than others, but the problem has always been is that it is incredibly volatile with where you go. Some places are great, some places are absolutely terrible. But this is truly shows exactly what it is when you get universal health care, because you don't have any real control over how they function or how they work, right? We have to petition to the federal government in order to fix the systems, or to say, look, this one down here and for example, I'm not even saying specifically, but like if there's one in Charleston, right? The Charleston one is just terrible. And so we need to fix it because of this, and this, right? And then imagine how long it's going to take for them to address it and everything else. There were some bills that came through, such as the Mission Act, where they were actually looking to take veterans and say, look, the VA is not going to be able to take care of you because you're so far away because of this, that, or the other, right? They couldn't get you an appointment within 60 days. Things like this, that you could go to a private clinic and you would be reimbursed, right? If that's your fix, I mean, it shows an indication that the system itself is not working. So I think when we look at universal healthcare, we can find a pretty glaring issue of the quality of care that people are receiving. And this is true regardless of where you go, unless you're looking at spending upwards of 60% of your GDP in order just to funnel it into your healthcare system to ensure that there's so much money being dumped into it that you can drive people to come in to take care of it. But it's not a sustainable thing, and even some of the Nordic countries are pulling back on some of the social safety nets. So we've discussed that aspect of it, and I want to discuss some of the legislations that we've had here in the States over time that have contributed to some of the problems that we face in our healthcare system, or has actually not addressed it at all, but people will praise it as if it is fixing things. And of course, I want to, when I speak with Republicans on the right, Reagan was the greatest in their opinion. Well, was one of the greatest. Now arguably a lot of them say Trump is. But Reagan was great. And one of the things that Reagan did was the COBRA bill. So he signed COBRA into law, and COBRA was to directly affect the way healthcare is provided in this country. There were things such as even if you have no ability, no desire to pay for your healthcare, you can go to any hospital if you are in dire need, and they will be forced to treat you. but there's also things that didn't really address issues, but it made people feel better, such as in Cobra, if you are an employee and you are laid off, fired, or just lose your job for any reason, you can have up to 18 months of your health insurance be maintained. Now, America is one of the only nations, or is the only nation, that has health insurance tied to an employer. This was, of course, due back in the early 1900s, where wages were stopped, were halted by the government. And so employers had to find ways of giving more benefits, right? To increase your wages without directly giving you a check. And so they got into paying for people's insurance. And so as a result of this, over time now, the market has pushed more and more people to be forced into working for an employer in order to get your health insurance. So what Cobra did was, now that your employer is giving you health insurance and is paying roughly around 30%, 60% if it's a great company, 100% if it's a phenomenal company that really cares about its people. I didn't say that. But if you lose your job for 18 months, you can actually maintain your health insurance. Now, the key here, of course, is that you're going to pay roughly around 102% of your health insurance. So you're going to pay 100% of it by yourself, and then usually it's around 2% administrative fees just to keep things right. So as we look into this conversation around healthcare, of course, health insurance and the cost of healthcare is such an important factor, that Cobra was there for the wealthy. It wasn't there for the middle class, and it certainly is not there for those lower on the economic scale. So we can see where something that has been widely approved by so many doesn't actually affect most Americans, especially now, as cost of healthcare, as cost of insurance, cost of premiums, and actual out of pocket and everything else that have driven up so far. In more recent news, of course, the Affordable Care Act passed in 2010 under President Obama. This has been a point of discussion for a lot of people. This has been a point of discussion for a lot of people as to how we can justifiably fix our health insurance, which would then fix our health care. And I do have to disagree with this. Couple quick points on this. So it restructured health insurance across the country, which caused many health insurance companies to actually close their doors, because there's nothing better than closing down some businesses by forcing them into restructuring. And I agree that there's a lot of issues that when we see the lack of coverage, or the lack of coverage for some incidents, it's difficult to bear that, and it's difficult to not have an emotional response to it. But the restructuring actually hurt the market in many different ways. Individual plans, individual coverages became a little more difficult to obtain. In some states, you lost all insurance companies from actually doing this, from allowing you to get into the pool as an individual. So it meant that you were forced to either become an entrepreneur, or not to become an entrepreneur, but to be a part of a bigger business, to be a part of that pool, to join in and to be a part of the insurance pool, or you went without. It was proposed as legislation that would reduce premiums, and many people flaunt this inaccurately, because it didn't actually reduce premiums. It reduced the rate in which premiums increased for a short period of time, but it did not in any way reduce the cost of health insurance or health care in this country. So we're talking about a band-aid on that. And probably my most difficult part of Affordable Care Act to understand how it was accepted was the individual mandate. And the individual mandate if we have anyone younger than me, for I'm proud of you for being here, first of all. But the individual mandate, of course, is that if you do not have health insurance, when you file your taxes, they're going to ask you, did you have health insurance? And you have to say yes or no. If you did not have health insurance for any reason, whether you didn't want it, didn't need it, or could not afford it, they would penalize you. This was the individual mandate. Now, currently, right now, we do have a challenge coming up to the Supreme Court, potentially, if they take up the case, on whether the individual mandate is A, constitutional, and B, if it is inseverable from the Affordable Care Act. And both of these questions are incredibly important. So if the individual mandate is deemed to be unconstitutional, and argue that it is unconstitutional because there's no constitutional authority to force citizens to purchase anything, including permits or what have you, but even within the guise of or the attempt that people have had of using the Commerce Clause or the General Welfare Clause, which I would argue is aconstitutional at best, there isn't much grounds there for that. Fines and fees for not purchasing something, it's an interesting ploy that's been used. And certainly Justice Kavanaugh, then Judge Kavanaugh, had an opinion on that actually helped get Affordable Care Act passed by calling it a fee rather than a tax. But nonetheless, so if it is ruled unconstitutional, which I would argue is the correct decision on that, the question then becomes, can the Affordable Care Act itself stand with or without the individual mandate? And of course, the individual mandate was a money grabber for this, because those people who didn't want insurance or couldn't afford insurance, when we take money from them, we're able to put it into the pool and allow for the Affordable Care Act to continue on with the insurance that it was providing, and it helps subsidize the entire movement. So we've seen a lot of, over the years, we've seen a lot of attempts. I'm definitely excited for having Cajun on to talk about the Affordable Care Act. He was the guy that popped into my head when we go deeper into a deeper dive on topics. I definitely want to have him on to talk about the Affordable Care Act for sure. Great point, Eskimo. I'm just telling you guys, all full transparency here on the show, right? You guys get to hear it all. But so throughout the years, we have seen partisan attempts at changing legislation, at trying to restructure this, tweak it and fine tune it. But I think we've missed the mark in so many different ways. Because when we just try to tweak a broken system, just tweaking it's not going to fix it, especially when the tweaking is what has been making it worse off and worse off year after year after year, bill after bill after bill, law after law after law. Eventually the insanity has to sink in, and we have to realize it ourselves, look ourselves in the mirror, and demand better. And so that's what I'm really hoping for from this conversation that we're having tonight. And so I want to talk about one more thing before I get into some of the solutions that I see. This one is one of those topics that truly does get people angered up. And I promise you I'm here for it, but at the same time, I don't have time for it tonight. But I'm going to say it. And I don't know if you guys are ready for me to say this, but the topic of abortion. Whew. I said it. Abortion. It's a healthcare thing, right? You have people on both sides of the aisle that have their justifications as to why they believe in what they do. It's an incredibly sensitive issue, and it's not one that we can just dictate over others. We've learned that the government doing prohibition has not been an effective tool and has not led to the intended consequences. But there are things that we can do that make people safer. Certainly abortion has been made relatively safe, but there are still adverse effects for it. But there's ways of stopping abortions from occurring at all. And I think that that's one thing that, regardless on which side of the aisle you stand on within this discussion, I think that voluntarily reducing the number of abortions would be an overall net benefit to society, especially if we can make it maintain it as voluntary, but also make it to where people are much happier with the surrounding topics. And so this is going to be another rabbit hole that we can dive down into. Birth control. Yes, Pam is already on the ball. So some of the topics that come around with abortion, we look at the last step in this, right? When somebody may be at the very last step and decide to have an abortion. Now, we've seen some people who are very proud, who claim to shout your abortion, and that arguably will go out and have intercourse in order to create life and then to end it through an abortion, right? This is not a conversation for them. But for many people who do have an abortion, it's not an easy topic for them even. It wasn't an easy decision for them. And so ways that we can look at this, when a woman wants to be on birth control, right now, the way that the system is structured is that she has to go and see a doctor. And so once she sees her doctor is going to talk to her about what's right for her. And then she will give her, the doctor will give her a prescription. She goes to a pharmacy and gets filled out for a prescription. If she wants to keep going, right, she has to, over time, she has to go in and get checkups and make sure that everything's working and functioning the way that she wants to. And then she can go and get more prescriptions and continue on down this path. Now, as the system sits right now, that is costly. Unless of course, there are some programs or some service providers that do find a way to make this more affordable to be seen and to be given these prescriptions and everything else. But this needs to be more readily available by allowing for birth control to be sold over the counter. By making it easy and affordable without the need of an appointment, the overall costs will be lowered, enabling more women to have more control over their reproductive health and have a much greater success in their own family planning. This, of course, is a great idea, right? We are not going to be able to demand people to not have intercourse when they're not ready for children, right? No matter the finger wagging, it just doesn't end in that way. And so this is one step that we can do. I don't want to get into like the adoptions and the foster care and looking at all the different forms of contraceptives and ways of finding to make those easier easier and more affordable for both men and women, but focusing more on the pharmaceutical side of things, the cost for somebody to get any kind of pharmaceutical, not just birth control, it does go up. And so I want to find ways to break down this barrier for as many people as we can. And I think that certainly, right, looking at birth control is one important way. When we talk about finding ways of making healthcare more affordable, so as we discussed with the universal healthcare, that there's three aspects, right? There's the universality, there's the affordability, and there's the quality. And we want to have as high in all three of those factors as possible. But of course, as you pull towards 2, the third is left out or diminished. And that's the struggle, because you want the highest degree of all three of them. Do you want 70% across the way? Do you want 100, 140, right? Where do you want to land this at the end? And I think that the best answer for this is to look at how some of the systems have functioned in the past, how the systems are functioning now, understanding general good market techniques, and understanding some of the bad legislation that is still in the books. So we can look at how we can make, I have a study that was done to show legislation that's in 35 states and Washington, D.C. that increases the cost of healthcare by 40%. It drastically reduces the quality of healthcare by 40%. And of course, these are not universal healthcare systems. So as the cost goes up, you have less and less people that can access healthcare, let alone if they're in a rural area. So I'm of course talking about a law called Certificate of Need. Now, I've spoken about Certificate of Need plenty of times, and I realize I only have about 10 minutes left. Oh my God, I'm a libertarian. Certificate of Need laws. What are they? How do they work? And which states don't have them? So if you guys are from Texas, from California, from Idaho, North Dakota, South Dakota, Wyoming, Colorado, Utah, New Mexico, Kansas, I almost said Panama, Pennsylvania, New Hampshire, you do not have to worry about this conversation. This is not applicable to your state, but it is still important for you to hear it. It's just not applicable to you, thankfully. You guys are the constant. You guys are the proof that Certificate of Need laws do not work. So brief synopsis of what Certificate of Need laws are. Certificate of Need laws was a federal mandate back in the 70s that quickly was removed. Now, how often do we know about bills that have been enacted at the federal level and then removed? I can think of prohibition. I'm sure that there's a couple other smaller ones, but this one is an important one. So when it was enacted as a federal mandate, it spread across all 50 states. And then it was removed as a federal mandate, and we still have, as I said, 35 states and DC still maintaining Certificate of Need. And what this is for any medical provider who's looking to provide services or goods within the healthcare system or the healthcare industry, or to expand their already existing healthcare providers or service provider, they must request through the Certificate of Need Board or through a government agency working like their Certificate of Need Board, and petition to them what changes they would like to see and why. And so as they petition, part of the review process in all these states is that they verify that there is not somebody else who has the Certificate of Need in that area. So if in my area of northern South Carolina, northwestern part of South Carolina, we have Prisma Healthcare who has the Certificate of Need in our area. So if I decided that because I saw a lack of care, an increasing number of costs, or a monumental jump in cost for the average South Carolinian to go through Prisma Healthcare, for me to go into providing healthcare for this area, I have to go to the Certificate of Need Board and request to them, hey, I would like to provide healthcare in this area. And so I can have all of the important information and give them everything that they need in order for them to feel justified in my cause. And what they would do is once they've basically almost got ready to stamp it yes, they give it to Prisma. Prisma, do you want to have this competition? And of course Prisma goes yes. No, of course not. They say no. And so then starts my legal battle in order to do this. We had in Fort Mill, South Carolina in 2002, an entity decided that they wanted to start providing healthcare. And so they requested and petitioned to the Certificate of Need Board in order to start. And when they sent this off to the current provider or the current holder of the Certificate of Need in the area, you can have multiple entities having Certificate of Need, but they had the monopoly at that time, which is what Certificate of Need laws creates. When they brought it to them, they said absolutely not and took them to court. Well, a mere 18 years later, they finally got the approvals, and now they're finally erecting their healthcare provider buildings in Fort Mill, South Carolina. So it only took them 18 years and millions upon millions of dollars, and when they could have been providing healthcare in those areas. So this is just one aspect of it. This is not just providing those services and then you get a blank slate and you can do what you want as long as you stay within those. No. So if a part of the request is to say how many rooms you want, how many beds you want, how many pieces of medical equipment you want, and including, as COVID came through, how many ventilators do you want? And if you ever decide you want to change them, you have to go back and petition, and it goes to any of your competitors in the area, because they want to make sure that the people need it and not that you just want to take advantage of a market. Does this make sense to you guys? Like, I'm sure that the words make sense, but does this make sense to you guys in an economic thinking of we need to have as much control and allow for monopolies to stand, and they're backed by government, and that somehow this is going to make people better off in the long run? I don't think so. So as COVID came through on, I'm torn on the date, March of 2020, it was either the 13th or the 17th, but March of 2020, when it was declared a national emergency, many states declared their own state of emergency, in which many of them addressed Certificate of Need laws. Here in South Carolina, we did suspend Certificate of Need laws to allow for what in the coming months, when they thought that ventilators would be important for the recovery and livability of people with COVID, they were able to just go and get ventilators, as any medical provider should be able to do. They should be able to meet those needs of their patients, of their communities, and be able to make those changes without the necessity of going and petitioning to the government or petitioning to their competitors of saying, I would like to provide this service because people are in need. But rather that if you are providing a service in an area and you see that there's a higher demand for one aspect of your field that you are specialized in, that you should be able to do what is necessary in order to provide for those. That should be the need. So we have Certificate of Need laws in place. And I believe I've already said it, but the states that don't have Certificate of Need laws, they have roughly around 40% lower costs because there are more healthcare providers in those areas. Because you have rural people who don't have to travel as far to be seen, because you have more people competing, and so they're going to, of course, try to find ways to cut the cost to the consumer so that they can provide a better care, so that they can ensure that people keep coming back to them, so that they can continue battling it out and keep sustaining themselves and keep making a living for themselves. And you have this competition that allows for actual good market principles in which quality goes up, costs goes down, and as a result, more people are able to be seen. Those are the three metrics that we've been talking about: universality, spending, and quality. You can see the spending go down, the cost to the consumer go down. You can see the quality improve over time. You can see more and more people be seen. Because when they're in a rural area and they're traveling, right now in my state, we have people that are traveling 4 to 5 counties to be seen for appointments with specialists. Allowing for more specialists to pop up is only better for the people in those areas. If they decide that there's a better one a little bit further away and they decide to make that trek, the person that's hurting is the specialist near them because they are not providing a good enough service. So either they'll correct themselves or they'll go out of business. And this is why it's so important for me that when we have these kinds of discussions. The goal of certificate of need laws when implemented are the exact opposite of what the actual results were. They desire to increase the competitiveness within the markets. It desired to ensure that the market was able to respond in an organized manner to be able to provide for the service and goods. It was supposed to ensure that the prices did not go up. It was to ensure that quality was still important. But when you lose the competitiveness within a market, stagnation is imminent. And that's what we've seen across this nation in 35 states and Washington, D.C. So we can look at that and we can see an objective truth. We can see the studies, we can see the results. We can look at different parts of healthcare, which arguably may not be healthcare, but we can see different medical fields, such as LASIK eye surgery, RPK eye surgery, or even plastic surgery, where they have not been hit and regulated and controlled and manipulated in the same way that emergency rooms, general practices, OBGYN, surgeons, specialists have been hit with these regulations, controls, and everything else, because feelings. But when you look at those specifics I was talking about before, the LASIK and the plastic surgery, what we have seen from them over time is that the cost for you to get those surgeries drastically is cutting itself drastically year after year. It's becoming cheaper and cheaper, that now you have middle class people going out and getting some of these things. You have it to where LASIK eye surgery is affordable for middle America. You have to where the results, the quality of the results, more people are seeing 20/20 coming out of LASIK eye surgery than when it first began. You have more people not looking deformed as a result of their plastic surgery. They look more natural. You have shorter healing times. You have people genuinely more satisfied with the services that are being rendered through those services, because they've not been controlled in the way that our government has been controlling our healthcare system. And so with that on my mind, with that in my understanding, we often talk about banning, I say we, there are many people that talk about banning insurance companies. There are people that are talking about banning, banning, closing your doors and not allowing people to come in. We talk about forcing universal health care. We force stagnation of wages, or a ceiling for wages. We talk about a lot of these things, and as an end result, what we are doing is we're shooting our own market in the foot, and we miss the mark on understanding that the American healthcare market is one of the things that allows for a lot of these other markets to survive, because within our market, we also have the research and development teams. We have the innovations through medical equipment, through medical treatments, and everything else, where we are providing this over the years. We're sending out all this information and helping those other nations that have decided to go to universal healthcare, where they're not allocating as much money, or they're not allowing for as much money to go into these research and development teams. And so we are literally sitting here with an entity that is allowing for not just us to be okay, but to help out other nations be okay. And for me myself, I want to see this goodness be unleashed. I want to see our fullest potential of how good we can have of a healthcare system. I want to see how great of quality. I want to see us kick cancer's ass. I want to see us be able to take terminal illnesses and turn them into a walk in the park. Simply come in, get seen, get taken care of, and on your way back out to enjoy life once again. I want to see just how good of a healthcare system that we can have. And I'm so concerned that we become so attached to some of these emotional arguments, because I mean, healthcare is so incredibly important. I understand the sensitivity around it. I understand the desire to find a fix. But we're not going to find it through legislation. We're not going to find it through these controls and regulation. We're going to find it with the people who are desiring to make those changes, who are desiring to make the impact, who took the Hippocratic Oath and driving forward, but they're hitting barrier after barrier right now. And so my plea to you all is to join me in helping fight to break down some of these barriers. But I plead with you guys all to join in, to share this out, to help spread the message on how we can better healthcare system. And of course, I'm always here to learn more, as well as to help share with what I've been learning. And I'm looking forward to continuing on with this conversation. And as I said in the beginning, we're going to dive deeper into these specific topics in the future shows. We'll have some guests on to be able to help spice it up a little bit. But I want you guys to know that I love you guys. I appreciate you guys all. And make sure that if you guys are not already prepared to do so, you guys hop on over to the Cajun Libertarian Show. He's going to be on tonight in about 26 minutes. So 9:30 Freedom Time. That's Eastern Time. And then make sure you guys get back here tomorrow night, Tuesday night, for Muddy Waters of Freedom. Wednesday night at 8 p.m. Eastern, we're going to be seeing My Fellow Americans with Spike Cohen himself. Thursday night, Writer's Block with Matt Wright. And Friday night with Cajun and Eskimo. It'll be a fantastic time, from bayous to igloos. Always a good show with it. And I'm so glad to see Muddy Waters be Monday through Friday now, guys. And I hope you guys are enjoying it as well. You're getting a lot of different perspectives, a lot of different thoughts, a lot of different views. And this is what allows for a society to be better. If I can just reflect on that for a second, this is what allows for a society to be better. Not that we have an echo chamber here. Yes, we're all libertarians, but we all have a different spin. We all have a different take, and they all resonate in a different way. And that's what I love about the Muddy Waters team. So with that, guys, I'm going to bid you all adieu. I made it 1 hour and 5 minutes. I try to keep it within an hour, but I'm just too damn libertarian, if you will. But I love you guys all. I appreciate you all so much. And I will catch you guys next week, Monday at 8 p.m. Eastern. I'll be back. Love you all. Catch you guys soon.